As you know, our LCS is Cowabunga Comics, Lake Country, Wisconsin's best pop culture destination for new comics, back issues, gaming, retro video games, vinyl, and figures. Give them a call, 262-569-9999. Check them out online at cowabungacomics.com or follow them on Twitter at Incredicow. They are our LCS, and we utilize their deep discount mail order service to bring Oconomowoc, Wisconsin closer to us. They'll take care of you. Tell them Drew and Kyle sent you. Say hi to Eric and James from us. If you need an LCS, you can't go wrong with Cowabunga Comics.
Aloha! It's Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. In this episode, I will be interviewing a friend of the podcast, James Aquilone. He is an editor, writer, and a Bram Stoker Award nominee. He is here to promote his books, Kolchak, the 50th anniversary graphic novel, and his latest work, Shakespeare Unleashed. Now, this is a horror anthology, and there's also a one-shot comic book that's part of this series. Listeners, if you guys get a chance, please check out monstrousbooks.com. James, I hope I got the website correct. Did I get that
That's
correct?
right. Yeah, Monstrous Books.
For the following, the Kolchak graphic novel, either hardcover, trade, limited prints, T-shirts, and even the one-shot comic is available on that website right now. Shakespeare Unleashed is available for pre-order, if I got that correct, on the website
That's
too.
right. Yeah.
Okay, and also you can also even pick up his classic Monsters Unleashed anthology novel, and also his Dead Jack series. James, welcome back to the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing good. James, off the cuff question. It's been about a year since I interviewed you.
Yeah.
I have one question I have to ask. I just realized it. Did I pronounce your last name correctly?
How did you pronounce it?
I'm sorry?
How did you pronounce it? I didn't hear. It was probably right if I didn't
Okay.
notice.
I believe I said James Aquilone?
Aquilone.
Aquilone. Okay. All right. Sorry about that. Now, James, I want to congratulate you on the Bram Stoker Award nomination for the Kolchak graphic novel. I'm going to ask, do you remember what were you doing when you received word of this nomination?
Oh, that's funny because I knew I think I was aware that the nominations were going to come out that day. So I was up early that morning. I kept refreshing my mail to see, when the email would come in, and it never came in. So I was waiting all morning, all afternoon, and I thought, oh, maybe they're going to do it tomorrow. So I had just joined the bowling league, so I was driving to bowling, and as I'm about to park, someone messaged me on Facebook and was like, "Congratulations!" And I was like, "Oh, I guess I got nominated." So that's how I found out.
All right, and then, what was your reaction? I mean, I know you're parking your car, or you're getting out of your car, you're getting your bowling gear. What was your reaction?
I was amazing because I throughout my career I was always kind of put away awards. I was like, that's not. I'm not going for awards, and I didn't think I would ever get nominated or win any awards. So that was something I totally put out of my mind. So
Yes.
the fact that that I got a nomination was just mind blowing. It was just unreal.
And it's a very now correct me if I'm wrong, because it's a very prestige award. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
that's like the highest award in like horror fiction. So that's part of the Horror Writers Association. They put out the Bram Stoker Awards every year. And like Stephen King is obviously the king of the Stoker Awards. He's won like something like 15 Stokers, and Joe Lansdale's won like a bunch of them, and Jonathan Mayberry.
Oh, that's really nice that you're in that league with them. It's really nice. It is.
Yeah, it's just really insane.
Now I'm gonna now there's also two I saw on Twitter that the is it the Ringo Awards? Is the ballots are open to put nominations for it, or to nominate
Yeah,
or how?
I think they opened maybe like a month ago, so
Mhm.
we're eligible for the Ringos.
Nice.
Um, Well, yeah, I mean, and everybody in the book is eligible too. So you can vote for us for best anthology.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
the writers could go up for like best writers and best artists, and I don't know if there's a category for cover, but we have some good covers too.
Yes, you guys have
Yeah.
amazing covers, and I'm gonna hold off. I don't want to jump too much in. I'm just asking, did you hear of any other nominations coming for the graphic novel? Were there any other nominations?
Um, yeah, it was nominated for the Imagine Awards. It's a convention called the Imaginarium Awards. It was nominated there, and so was Classic Monsters Unleashed. They're up for like best anthology. And now I'm forgetting it. It's nominated for another award, and now I can't remember.
No, it's all right.
Remember, it's just so many awards. The Rondo Hatton Classic Horror Awards. So it's up for and we're up against a lot of big comics and graphic. We're up against Steve Niles for
Oh,
Town of Terror and a bunch of other things. So I mean, and Steve's in the Kolchak book too. So he'll win either way. And Classic Monsters is also nominated for a Rondo Hatton Award.
nice. Again, congratulations on the nomination.
Yeah, so it's like 5 awards. I think we're up for between Kolchak and Classic Monsters Unleashed. I did submit for the Eisners.
Oh, that'd be
I
nice.
think I think they're gonna announce the nominees. I think next month.
Okay, all right. Now, before we start jumping in to Kolchak and Shakespeare Unleashed, where can new listeners follow you on social media?
If you go to Montrose Books, all the links are there. So we're
Mhm.
Montrose Books on Twitter. There's a Montrose Books Facebook group, or you can just follow me anywhere under James Aquilone.
All right. Now, James, before we get into the real meat of this incredible anthology, the Kolchak um, 50th anniversary graphic novel, I'm sorry, I'm going to ask you some questions that you've already answered in the previous interview. That was the Comics for Fun and Profit
Okay.
episode 701. That was dated back last year, January 10th of 2020. And I'm just asking three questions for new listeners who are not familiar. So for new listeners, may I ask, can you tell them who is Carl Kolchak?
Well, Kolchak was it was a TV series. It was actually preceded by 2 TV movies back in the first one came out in 72, the second one came out in 73, and then there was a 20 episode TV series that ran after the 2 TV movies. And the first TV movie was the highest rated TV movie of all time up to that point. I think it had something like 40 million viewers. Um, but Carl Kolchak was a reporter who he had his knack of always stumbling upon some kind of creature or monster. And then I guess in the end he would save the world, but no one believed him. No, he could never get any evidence that the monster existed. The camera always was out of focus or something, or the prints were destroyed. So that was that week after week he would stumble upon some the monster of the week, as they would say. But he could never get any evidence. But somehow he still prevailed at the end of the episode.
And then, what drew you to this character?
I'd always been a fan of Kolchak. I probably first saw it like they would rerun it a lot at like that would be like the late night movie or something in the 80s, and then because it was a big influence on the X-Files, when the X-Files came out in the 90s, then they started rerunning it again on cable. I think it was on the Sci-Fi channel for a while. So there was like a revival of interest in Kolchak in the 90s. So I probably started watching it again there too. So I mean, Kolchak was a fun show.
Yes.
But it also could be really scary. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, if you even watch it today, there are definitely creepy moments in it, and I think some like legitimately like scary moments. But they really balance that like real horror with the humor really well, which is hard to do. And that's the type of stuff I like to do in my own stuff. I have Dead Jack Zombie Detective series, which is kind of similar to a Kolchak. He's always stumbling upon monsters too, and he's kind of a goofy character. by Kolchak. So that was Kolchak was just right up my lane. So it was really awesome that I was able to put this book together.
And then the last question for new listeners, because when I interviewed you last, it was started off as a Kickstarter. What inspired you to do this passion project?
Well, I had done Classic Monsters Unleashed as a Kickstarter, and it went pretty well. But I knew I really wanted to do a comic book, some kind of comic book project. So it's really hard to break into the comic book industry unless you know people. So it's pretty impossible. So I knew if I had to do anything with comics, I'd have to do it on my own. There would have to be a Kickstarter. And so I wanted to do like a big comic book graphic novel project for the next one. And I was aware that Moonstone had the rights to Kolchak, and they had done Kolchak comics in the past, but they hadn't done one in a while. And so I was doing just some research, and then I discovered that the 50th anniversary of the first Kolchak movie was coming up next year. So I said that's a perfect opportunity to do a Kickstarter, and we can really do something really special with the anniversary. So it's perfect timing. And then Moonstone said yes to the project, and then we were just off and running. Pretty much right after the Classic Monsters Unleashed Kickstarter ended, we started working on Kolchak.
Now, before I start getting a little bit more to the graphic novel, how was the response on the book, such as reviews, book sales? And I'm not asking for numbers or anything, but was it something, was the book sales exceeded your expectations?
Oh, absolutely. In terms of, I mean, the Kickstarter was we made well over $100,000, which that was very surprising. We had almost 2,000 backers, but the sales then continued after the Kickstarter as well. We really haven't stopped. So I've been just shipping out books for the last few months, like almost every day. When we ended up getting all the books, finally, I mean, everything was shipped to my house. So we had my wife and I, who did all the shipping. I mean, some people got like electronic rewards, so that you don't have to worry about. But we had at least 1,500 people who we had to send books to. So my wife and I took about 6 weeks where we were just shipping Kolchak books going to the post office sometimes 3 times a day.
Oh, wow.
We ended up getting to know all the workers at all the post offices in Staten Island, because they would see me coming in with this dolly of pins with books, and they go, "Oh no!" So that was wild doing all that, but once when we finished, it was like, oh, that was such a load off our shoulders. It was really awesome because the response to it has been incredible. We were a little bit late with the Kickstarter, so you don't like to do that, but everyone was like, "Whoa, it was well worth the wait." Everyone was really happy with the books. I've been getting tons of emails from the backers telling me how much they love the books. All the reviews, we've gotten some pro reviews, and every review has been incredibly positive. Even on Goodreads, we have really good ratings. I haven't seen anyone, I shouldn't say it because it jinxed me, but no one has said anything really, that they hated it, or they were crazy, or even like a mediocre review. So it's been super positive, and it is one of those anthologies where it's difficult to do, but it's one of those anthologies where all the stories are good.
Yes.
Not a weak story in there, and then none of the art is weak. So it really from the beginning to end, it was a really strong book. So I was really happy about that, and people have been saying the same. So I was really happy that we did justice to the Kolchak, because I know they have really serious fans. So no one was like, "Oh, you ruined Kolchak for me." We really did it in the spirit of Kolchak. So everyone who worked on it is a really big fan.
And I'm going to say that's a perfect segue when you said it's the spirit of Kolchak. So because I know the stories in this graphic novel covers and we talked about this in the previous interview. It covers Kolchak's life from a young high school newspaper reporter up until his final story in the 2000s. you know, one thing I want to know was this planned from the beginning or okay. So
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah.
okay.
So I figured since it was like a 50th anniversary, and this had never been done before,
Hmm.
it'd be really cool to just see his entire life,
Hmm.
or as much of it as possible in one book.
Hmm.
Um, and Moonstone wasn't crazy about the idea because
Hmm.
they have their own continuity and
Yes.
can from their books, which they just keep Kolchak at like a 50 years old, and he's
Hmm.
always in the present.
Yes.
Uh, so it took a lot of convincing to do this.
Hmm.
I thought that was the better way to do it, and it was something that we hadn't seen. And I really wanted to do the young Kolchak, like the teenage Kolchak, which David Avalone wrote that story, and he did an amazing job with it. And Julius also did that artwork, and it's incredible. So that kicks off the book. So we were off to a good start with that story.
Because that's a perfect segue to go into some of the writers. But I wanted to point out, yeah, David Avallone's story basically sets up how Carl is going to be for the rest of his life. You
Right.
know, um, so I'm kind of going off the cuff here, but it's just because I remember, he's fighting with his high school editor that, yes, Carl, just go down to cover the carnival, on the boardwalk. And Carl's going, wait a minute, there's this war going on, it's could start world, could be a world war thing. We should be covering. No, 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 Carl. And then we see him. He now correct me if I'm wrong, but this is where we find him with his like light with his like those light blue um um suits that he wears.
Right. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we get his mannerism. We get the whole that it just captures the essence of
Yeah.
who he is from the beginning. And I love that little touch where I think one of the police officers at the end was, and I can't remember the story, but he kind of blows him off. But the officer had that kind of that straw hat thing on the
Mhm.
car,
Right.
and he said,
Yeah, that's the last shot as he puts the hat on. So yeah, that was the thing we really wanted. I said it's got to be like Indiana Jones 3, where
yes,
you find that where River Phoenix he gets the hat, and again he gets the whip and all that. And it says it should be the like origin story. So
yes,
the hat is really important in Kolchak.
hmm
So we have to see how he gets the hat. So so that was really awesome that we got all that in there, and it worked with that
yes.
first one. Yeah.
Now you have an incredible list of creators who have worked on this graphic novel. Now I can't go through everybody because we would just run out of time. So Nancy A. Collins, R.C. Matheson. He's the son of the great sci-fi horror writer Richard Matheson. You have Rodney Barnes. We mentioned David Avalone. And then artists, I'm going to try to pronounce Simon Kredansky,
Yeah,
Colton Worthy. He worked on a story with you that you did the
that's right. Yeah, they did a cover.
yes Satanic Panic 88, if I remember
Right.
correct.
Yeah.
Yes. Gabriel Hardman, J.K. Woodward, to name a few. So um how did you get this amazing talent?
um, Colton I knew because Colton worked on my Dead Jack books. He did all the covers for Dead
Mhm.
Jack. I worked with him on a bunch of projects before. Um, Mostly I got the artist from the writers. So I just would ask the writers like, who do you want to work with, and they would bring
Mhm.
in um an artist. So I think Peter David was one of the first writers that joined, and I asked him who he wanted to work with, and he recommended J.K. Woodward. So he came in, and he ended up doing two stories and a cover.
Mhm.
So that was mainly how we got most of the artists. I only knew a few artists going into this, so that was gonna be a problem. So
Mhm.
it just we just kind of went like one writer at a time, one
Mhm.
artist at a time, kind of building it, and it started getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And Steve Niles just kind of joined in the middle of the campaign. Um, I didn't know him at all. I
Mhm.
met him as a writer, and I'm a big fan. Uh, but then when he found out about the project on Twitter, he had said something like on one of the posts, like, "Oh, I'm a big Kolchak fan. I would love to be part of this." And then I messaged him, And I was like, "Are you serious? Are you
Mhm.
joking?" It's like, "No, I'm really." I'm like, and I think I asked him a few times, like, "You really? Okay." And then he ended up joining the book, yeah, toward the middle of the campaign.
That's pretty cool. I was going to ask you this one question, but I want to change it a little bit. Were you surprised to see how many readers were coming out of the woodwork going, "Oh my God, I remember this TV show. I loved it as a kid." You know.
Yeah, yeah, because the show's been off the air for 50 years,
Yes.
and although even in the 90s it kind of got revived because of X-Files,
Hmm.
that's 30 years ago. So, um, I mean, I knew there was some like fandom like on Facebook because there's a Facebook Kolchak group that's pretty big,
Yes.
but I didn't realize how many people knew. It's like, I don't normally hear people talking about Kolchak. Now
Hmm.
I do, but I didn't realize so many people were fans of the show and remembered it. And a lot
Yes.
of people do remember it, and a lot of horror fans are fans of Kolchak. So I know a lot of horror writers are also
Hmm.
fans of it. So I thought it did have a fandom, but I didn't realize it was as big
Yes. Hmm.
as it is, and it's huge.
Yes. Um, Now, when I got my copy, oh, I love the hardcover, and I had to pick the Jerry Ordway cover.
Yeah,
So let me ask you this off the cuff question: how did you guys get Jerry Ordway?
I was one of the guys who was working on the book with us knew him,
Uh-huh.
so we just he gave him the email. And we tried to get him in, and he was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." So that was it. I mean, usually how it works, you ask around, you say, "Do you know this
Yes.
person? You have this person's email?" And
Mm-hmm.
then you try to network your way toward them. And like Kim Newman
Mm-hmm.
was a story in there. I didn't know anyone who knew him,
Uh-huh.
and
So,
I had seen he did the like audio commentary on one of the Kolchak TV movies, the Blu-ray for it. So I knew he
wow.
was a fan, and I had read that he some interview he was talking about Kolchak, and he even said in the article that he wanted to write a Kolchak story. So I think I just found his email somewhere
Mm-hmm.
online or something. So I just emailed him out of nowhere,
Mm-hmm.
hoping that he'd respond, and then he was like, "Yeah, I'll do it." So that was totally like a shot in the dark.
So, listeners, before go on to start moving on to Shakespeare Unleashed, you know, um, this is great because it's they're short stories. I love the Nancy A. Collins, Warwick Johnson Cadwell story. I
Hmm.
love I think he was called the Sin Eater, if I remember correctly.
Sin
I,
Feeder, I think.
the Sin Feeder. Oh my God. I mean, I'm not spoiling, but there's so many levels, so many layers to that story. I'm just gonna tease one to listeners that Kolchak is in Florida in the 90s. And as you already mentioned that, that Kolchak influenced Chris Carter, the creator of X-Files, loved the TV series. And when the X-Files came out in the 90s, I remember I can't remember if we talked about it in the last interview, but I remember reading Chris wanted Darren McGavin, who played Kolchak, to reprise his role. And
Yeah.
Darren McGavin's kind of, no, I don't want to. But he had him come on the X Files. And if I remember correctly, that first X Files story that they introduced Darren McGavin's character in the X Files was set in Florida, if I remember
Oh,
correctly.
really? Oh, that I didn't know that.
I think so. I got it's been a while, because I remember I thought it was kind of weird that why is it during and my memory is kind of fuzzy, so maybe I could be wrong too. But I was kind of why is the X-Files story during a hurricane? It's in Florida. So all right.
Yeah,
Um
that's a that's a good connection.
and then also to so listeners, if you are interested in picking up this graphic novel, you know, it's filled with um, great shorts, great comic book stories. Also in the back too, there's also like a prose short story too. I think how many short stories in the back?
There are 10 short
Oh,
stories
okay,
back of the hardcover.
okay,
It-
yeah. So if you get a chance, pick up this graphic novel. A couple more questions before I move on. May I ask, were there some stories that were incredible for the Kolchak graphic novel, but she just had to turn them down to space or the limit of number of pages.
There were no well, when we did with the pro stories, there were people who submitted short stories for that.
Mm-hmm.
We only had the room for the 10 short stories, so there were some good stories there. We had to turn down for the graphic novel. We did have to turn down actually a couple of well-known comic book writers who tried to get into say no to, because we had already gone well above our budget.
Yes.
It was only 9 stories in the graphic novel and maybe about 100 pages. And then we up with 12 stories and the 188 pages. And then the deluxe edition is 248. So we almost doubled as far as like the comic stories. That was a lot more money than we were expecting to pay. So that's a problem. So when we have these other two big names come, and I was like, I would love to get you in there, but it's a little late now, because now it would have been well over 200 pages, just the standard edition. And you add just one story, that's thousands of dollars, because we were working with the top artists out there. These are all people with Marvel and DC, and can't really not pay them their rate. So like a 12-14 page story, you're talking a couple of $1,000 each story that you add, and then it's more money to print too. So that would have blown us away, and we were already just way stretched at that point. It was even getting a little scary, because like, whoa, the budget is like almost doubled here. The book really needed to be successful. Or I would have went bankrupt.
But when you talk about, you have incredible artists, J.K. Woodward and Peter David, the story in the 1950s. Oh my God. I mean, I still can picture J.K. Woodward capturing spot on the likeness of Darren McGavin, a young Darren McGavin, and he's holding the microphone talking about his, the story that, he wants to write, but he can't. But it was just, that was just drawn, that one panel.
Yeah, he does amazing work. Yeah, so he's done a lot of work in Shakespeare Unleashed too, but we'll talk about that.
Oh yes, okay, all right. 2 more questions, and then I'll start going on to Shakespeare Unleashed. What are there any other future plans for another volume or anything?
Not. I mean, we haven't really talked about it. So I mean, I don't know.
Okay.
Good thing. I mean, Moonstone is putting out more culture stuff. They actually just put out another prose anthology.
Okay.
Nancy Holder did a story. I think it's like Kolchak and Nosferatu. So Moonstone does put out, and they'll continue to put out probably like 2 or 3 Kolchak books a year. But I don't know if I'm going to be doing another Kolchak thing. We've got a lot of projects anyway, just through Montrose Books. But I don't know. Because sometimes it's like the success of this has been so like over the top. So I don't even know. Like if I do it again, then people expect it to be even bigger.
Oh, that's right. Yes. No, I hear what you're saying.
Yeah. It's like, like this stop. You're at the top.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move on to Shakespeare Unleashed. Now, I'm not being sarcastic. You mentioned in the introduction of the prose anthology novel that you fell in love with Shakespeare in high school. May I ask, what was it that attracted you to his work? Like, was it the material? Was it a teacher's love to, that English teacher who showed, their love for Shakespeare?
No, we were assigned Hamlet. I guess it was my senior year in high school. And I don't know, for some reason, I just sat down. I remember it. I can remember this, like just like laying down on the couch and just started. It was like I think it was like a rainy like Friday afternoon, and I just sat down to read Hamlet. And I was never a great student, even though I love reading. I just I never loved doing it for schoolwork.
Yes.
So I would I would often not read the books or the assignments for class, and I would just read maybe like the back of the book, or I'd watch the movie, and then I would just try to wing it when it came to the test. So this time I actually sat down and was reading it, and I got caught up in it, and then I just read it like all the way through, and I just loved it. Yeah, there's something about, it's always been my favorite play then, Hamlet. Because it has so many like amazing lines in there, and I think because I'm Gen X, this was probably like late 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Hamlet is very much like a Gen X type character because he's kind of a slacker. He's kind of ambivalent. He doesn't know what to do. He's,
Mm-hmm.
like supposed to, kill the king there who killed his father. And there actually was like a Gen X version of Hamlet, if you remember, in the 90s where Ethan Hawke played Hamlet.
No, I don't.
Yeah, there's like an Ethan Hawke version and it's very Gen X-y because it was like right after he did like reality bites,
Mm-hmm.
like the big Gen X movie. So I think maybe it was just relatable at that time for like a Gen X kid, Hamlet. And then Rosencrantz and Guildenstern came out.
Mm-hmm.
Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, that movie with Tim Roth and Gary Oldman.
No.
And that movie came out like 2 or 3 years later. So people don't know, like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are characters in Hamlet. They're like his friends, and they in Hamlet, his mother and the new king hired them to kind of just find out what's going on with Hamlet and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
they're kind of like spies. And at the end of the play, they die, but you don't see that in the play. So someone just announces that Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead.
Mm-hmm.
Tom Stoppard, who's a screenwriter, and it was Tom Stoppard who wrote Shakespeare in Love.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
He wrote this play called Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead
Mm-hmm.
back in the 60s, which is like this really big play. So it was just about following Rosencrantz and Guildenstern around. And so you see them from the play of Hamlet, and then they go to Elsinore, and then we're seeing them, interact with each other, but also then they're kind of like weaving in and out of the play of Hamlet,
Uh-huh.
you know. So then we get to see like these two minor characters, like like they get a full story. So I thought that was like fascinating. It was like just wild. As I said, like in the intro to Shakespeare Unleashed, like I didn't know you can do that as a like you can take these two characters from Hamlet and we see what their lives are like, and then but we also then see them back in the play, and then they're out of the play, and then
Yes.
they're talking about the scene that they were just in. So it was really crazy. Like Tom Stoppard's like an amazing genius writer. So I was just blown away by that. So I always kind of thought of that, and I was like, I would love to do something like that.
Uh-huh.
And so after we did Classic Monsters Unleashed, and that was really successful, we said, let's do a series of these books.
Yes.
So I already had then the idea, so that would be great. Let's do Shakespeare.
Uh-huh.
So kind of like, from inspired from like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead. Let's do that. Let's take these characters from Shakespeare and see what we can do with them, and then put them into like horror stories. So
Yes.
that's really where the idea came from.
That's so cool. That is so cool. Um, um, and then correct me if I'm wrong. Actually I'm gonna let me ask you this question, because when people when they hear Shakespeare Unleashed, it's a horror anthology, and please don't take this the wrong way, because some readers may think, oh, are they going to do that weird, the Shakespeare is played how his writing is, but
Yeah.
that's not the format. Or there's one story that's kind of a format, but most of it is like most of it is like a regular short story novel with
Yeah,
a character.
yeah, we don't really use that. Yeah, I think there was some people who might have felt like, oh, I don't like Shakespeare, or I don't understand the language, or be like that.
Mhm.
And it's not. It's very much plain language. We do have one story that is written in that Shakespearean form.
Mhm.
So even and I don't know how to pronounce his name, but Dosher,
Mhm.
that's what he does. I mean, he's the guy who wrote the Shakespeare version of the Avengers. He wrote Shakespeare Star Wars.
Yes.
So he has this whole series of books where he does like Shakespeare. He does a Shakespeare version of Back to the Future
Oh my God.
book. So if you check him out, he's got a ton of them. And I got the Shakespeare Avengers book, and it's really good. It's like this huge book,
Huh?
got a lot of illustrations and stuff in it. So he does it in Shakespearean language, and it's formatted like a play.
Mhm.
So I had to get him to do it, and I was really happy that he said yes to it. So he did one for us.
Hmm.
Um, but I mean, it's in Shakespeare's language, yes, but it's fun, and there's a lot of like references to like James Bond movies and stuff like that. He throws
Ah,
in like lines and stuff like that, so you can catch all that type of stuff. So if you don't like Shakespeare, I think you'd like that.
hmm. Yeah.
It's definitely not inaccessible to people
Yes. That's yeah.
who maybe don't like. I mean, if you do like Shakespeare, I mean, you'll probably appreciate it more because
Hmm.
um there's a lot of references, to the plays and stuff that you will enjoy it on a different level. But
Yes.
even if you don't know Shakespeare, um, it's like West Side Story. West Side Story is based on Romeo and Juliet, and you don't have to know anything about Romeo and Juliet or
Hmm.
Shakespeare
Yes.
to enjoy West Side Stories. In fact, a lot of our stories are based on Shakespearean plays because that's kind of like the foundation of like Western literature. So
Yes.
you
Yeah.
really can't get away with it. I mean, if you're going to write a romance, it's going to have something probably to do with Romeo and Juliet. There's like foundational works. So that's what we were really looking for. We were just looking for like using Shakespeare also as a jumping up off point. Some of them are sequels to
Hmm.
uh, plays, but some of them are just. It's kind of there's one story about that's based on King Lear.
Hmm.
It kind of just takes that idea and it's about like a businessman who's going to all these different like psychics and mediums,
Yes.
but he wants to like ensure that he doesn't uh well he has like this vision that when he gets old he's going to lose all his money and he's going to be
Uh-huh.
destined. So he wants to use the psychics to ensure that he's going to live a long and healthy life. But then he meets because like in King Lear, no, I don't. I mean, I'm not an expert on Shakespeare either. For doing this, but he goes to each one, and then the third one tells him basically like you can't get what you want,
Hmm.
uh, if the other people are lying to you, and then he gets angry and things really turn out badly. But that's basically like the setup for King Lear, where he goes to his three daughters,
Yes.
and I forget exactly,
No,
but
no. Mhm.
but he goes to the three daughters, and I forget what he wants from them, but then the first two just tell him what he wants to hear,
Yes.
and the third daughter tells him, gives him the truth, and he's not happy about it, and things fall apart. So we're just taking. So this is Philip for Casey who writes the story for us in Shakespeare Unleashed, but he's just taking that basic setup and he's writing. So that would be a story that could stand on its own
Yes.
outside of Shakespeare. So that's a lot of what we have. So yeah, I don't think if it's not academic. It's not like
No, yeah.
um, it's not like schoolwork. You will enjoy it, but I do think there were some people who, because there were a lot of writers who passed on it. I think because of that.
Hmm.
Well, I don't know a lot about Shakespeare,
Hmm.
and I was like, you don't really have to know
Yeah.
that much about it. Like I said, just think of West Side Story, and if you just do a story like that, um, that's what we're looking for. So, yeah, you don't have to have like a PhD in Shakespeare to enjoy it.
Because for listeners, I talked to James just a little bit before we started. Um, there was a short story I read, a Timeless Tragedy by J.G. Fahrenheit. And that was a great story. And the premise again was a little bit about Romeo and Juliet. I,
Right.
but it had I'm not gonna spoil it, but it had that nice Twilight Zone feel to it about second chances. And that's all I'm gonna say because James, I just picked it because I mentioned to you I was gonna read at least one
Right.
short story before we did the interview. I just picked this one because I thought it sounded pretty good and I just loved it because it's not set during Shakespeare's time. It's set like in the 1950s,
Right.
you know, and it's so it and it was so relatable. I understood what was going on, and then all of a sudden I start to see this is sort of like Romeo and Juliet, and I love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, when you contacted writers, were there some writers that were excited to contribute to the literature world of Shakespeare? Like, well, they go, oh yeah, I've always wanted to do this.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yeah. There was a lot of like, yeah, because then they were like, yeah, I always wanted to do something, or I have an idea for this, or I tried to find some people who would seem like they would, fit into this, and so a lot of people, yeah, they just love the opportunity of then doing like a shit, because it's kind of an unusual idea. I haven't seen too much stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So to get to play in like that world,
Mm-hmm.
it's just like Kolchak, it's just really fun to like, to write a Kolchak story. So I think for a lot of them, it was just really cool to kind of take Shakespeare
Mm-hmm.
and as like a jumping off point for a story.
Mm-hmm.
But I did find some people who weren't like happy about it, like, no, Shakespeare. No, thank you. So I did get a lot of people who passed on it, which I was surprised.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for the most part, people were very on board, and they had a really good time with it.
Oh, that's so cool. All right. I want to talk about the one shot because we already mentioned about J.K. Woodward, the
Yeah,
artist. Because he drew a short story, and if I remember correctly, I think you were the one that wrote it, right?
yeah,
And Julia, was it Afterlife? Correct me if I'm wrong.
yeah. Romeo and Juliet Afterlife.
That was great.
Yeah, I have. Okay. Oh, there
Oh,
you go.
I'm sorry, with only audio, James. But yeah.
Oh,
Oh,
it is. For your,
yeah. Sorry.
I'm holding up the proof of the comic.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is like a staple stitch, but I'm gonna get it like probably perfect bound.
Uh-huh.
But this is the yeah. So it came out really good. So it's manga size. So it's like
Oh,
5 by 10.5.
okay.
So it's like a mini comic.
It's
And
so
it came out to 40 pages. It was supposed to be, again, kind of what we did with Kolchak. The Kickstarter, it was supposed to be 20 pages, and
uh-huh.
we doubled it to 40.
All right. I'm gonna start slowly wrapping things up. Correct me if I'm wrong, and I'm gonna try to pronounce a word. Now, if I remember correctly, I know that from the
Oh yeah.
previous. I'm sorry.
No,
That
no.
yeah, the word homunculus. How do you pronounce?
Homunculus, yeah.
Okay.
Homunculus.
Now, what was your reaction when you saw David Avellini had written that into the?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
How did
I'm
you
always
like?
happy. I don't think he knows. I don't know. You did research on me?
That was
Did
because
you
it was
sent
for
this?
last year's dinner. It was when I had to prepare for the last
Okay.
year's interview, and I
Yeah,
remember.
'cause, for some reason I always liked the word homunculus.
Yeah.
So like years ago, I wrote a story about a guy who's like he's like really depressed and he's saying like a lot of negative thoughts, and so he decides to like cut open a hole in his head,
Mm-hmm.
and out comes like this like gelatinous blob, and it starts talking to him, and it turns out that's what's been giving him all these like negative thoughts and things, and ruining his life. And he calls himself a homunculus,
Mm-hmm.
and homunculus literally means a little man,
Mm-hmm.
I think, in Latin. So but I never ended up finishing that story, and it never worked out. But then I ended up stealing that idea for Dead Jack.
Mm-hmm.
But then I have Dead Jack has his sidekick Oswald, who's a homunculus too. He had lived inside Jack's head, and Jack's a zombie, so he was
Mm-hmm.
living in his head for like 6 months, and then he came out one day, and then he becomes his sidekick. So I've used that idea a few times, but then I found out well, I had that idea for the short story years ago, and I never finished it, and I couldn't figure out a way to make it work. And then my cousin says to me, "Hey, did you know that there's someone ripped off your idea, and there's actually a manga
Mm-hmm.
called Homunculus, and it's almost the exact same idea. It's about a guy who had this thing living inside his head,
Yeah.
and it comes out of his head, and it's like this. That happens a lot. You have these ideas, and then somehow years later, it's like almost the same exact idea
Mm-hmm.
out by somebody. So there is a homunculus. I got to check out that comic. It looks cool. But yeah, and then my first imprint when I self-published the Dead Jack books, that was the name of my publishing company, was Homunculus House.
Cool.
I'm always happy when somebody throws that in there, like Dave. But I don't think he was aware of my
Mhm.
love of the word homunculus.
That is so cool. Sorry, I'm slowly wrapping things up. What was your reaction when you saw your name on this passion project, Shakespeare Unleashed? What was your reaction? Because I know your love for Shakespeare.
Yeah, I mean, it's always cool to see your name
No, yeah.
on the cover. Um, yeah, I mean, it's just been really amazing just the last couple of years, to just do these projects and
Hmm.
have them come out, because even when you're working on them, you feel like something's gonna happen and it's not gonna even come out,
Hmm.
because up to this point, there's been so many projects that didn't work out and
Hmm.
didn't happen. So to finally get things, these projects off the ground,
Yes.
and Kickstarter, and then
Yes.
putting the book together, and then getting the thing printed, and then finally getting it delivered and then out. It's such a long process. So you always feel like it's not going to happen. So it's really cool now that this is the third anthology I've had,
Yes.
and
Hmm.
it actually exists.
Hmm.
So it's really, I mean, that's where I always wanted to be, at the point where it's just, I have an idea for something and I can go and do it. So I
Yes.
think I'm at a point, especially, and a lot of it has to do with Kickstarter, that I can come up with these crazy ideas and then actually create it. And that's all I ever really wanted. It was just the ability to come up with something and then be able to do it.
Hmm.
So it's been really awesome
Hmm.
to be able to do that, and get them out into the world. And then it's just extra if then people actually also like it and buy it,
Hmm.
so, and well, if they buy it, then we can do more. So that's been really cool. So and then and in the end, I don't even care so much about having my name on it.
Hmm.
So sometimes I don't even put, I think even some of the Kolchak covers, I don't even put my name on the front cover.
Hmm.
I mean, I've done so much work on it, so I feel like I don't need all of that. The people who know that I put it together.
Hmm.
So it's just owning it and having it and holding my hand and like, wow, I put this book together. It's really cool.
Hmm.
So that's the fun part. It's like then finally having. That's why I like to show it around, even though this is only audio.
Yes.
Maybe you could show a picture. So I'm always like, oh look, and then I like to get like extra proofs and then show them to people and give them, you know. And that's now I'm going to conventions and stuff, so it's really cool now to like meet people
Yes.
to sell the books directly to them.
Mhm. What was the most fun or exciting thing that you love working on Shakespeare Unleashed?
Well, doing the comic was a really cool. We weren't originally going to do a separate comic.
Hmm.
We were going to do the prose anthology, but then I thought, what if we just put like maybe an 8-page comic
Yes.
in the middle of it or at the end? Um, and then there was David Hyde at Superfan Promotions who said
Yes.
to me, "Well, how much would it cost if you just did a separate like mini comic?"
Hmm.
And so when I looked at it, doing the separate mini comic actually was cheaper
Hmm.
to do than to insert, because if you insert even 8 pages into like a prose anthology, it's a lot of money,
Hmm.
because you have to have like better paper for the artwork and to do the insert. I think what it cost us like several $1,000s just to insert it. So to do a mini comic, it was pretty cheap.
Hmm.
And it
Yeah.
would be cool to have something else separate. Then we weren't just bound to do 8 pages,
Yes.
because like now the book is 40 pages. Although there is a short story in it, but we have 4 comic stories in there.
Hmm.
So we were able to expand it and have its own book.
Yes.
So that was really cool. It was like whenever I can do comics, it's a lot of fun. So even though this was supposed to be just a prose thing, we ended up making it also a comic. So
But it's pretty cool um because I'm just thinking about it right now is that because the one-shot comic book could be a gateway for for comic book readers who may be a little hesitant about reading a Shakespeare book. If they
Mhm.
see what it is, and they're going, wait, okay, now I understand what Shakespeare Unleashed is. Now I know this is the fun that they can do with it. Maybe I should go back and try to pick up the novel. I don't know. It's the one possible. It could be a gateway.
Yeah, and yeah, I mean I can see this being like in schools and stuff.
Yes.
Which would be cool. So if they want to get like kids into Shakespeare, the comics,
Yes.
it's a cool way, because it's got vampires in there and
Hmm.
people get murdered and stuff and zombies.
Yeah.
So Yeah, it's a cool thing. I mean, I would have loved, I mean, I would have, if I was a kid, I was like 15, 16, and I saw something like that, I would be all over that.
Yes, sir.
So like hopefully that is like maybe like the some kids like first experience with Shakespeare is like the comic. I haven't seen anything really like that either. So
Hmm.
I thought that would be cool to have like a Shakespeare horror comic book would be really cool. So yeah, it's a one shot, but I don't know. Maybe we could do more stuff with that. But and the comic is a little bit more playful than the prose anthology, so we have a little more fun with the comic.
Oh yes, I've read a couple of the stories. It's great, and then one shot. Um, may I ask, do you have? And if you can't tell me what your next series is, that's fine too. But may I ask, do you have another Unleash anthology set up already?
We have an idea,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not 100%
Oh, mm-hmm.
locked in. But we probably won't. We're not going to do one this year. Probably next year.
Yeah.
So the thing is, like, we did well with these two, and we had original ideas. So the trick is now for the third one is to come up with something again
Mm-hmm.
that's different and original.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, we could keep doing like Unleashed things where it's like fairy tales Unleashed, but I know that's been done. So maybe it
Yes.
was like the 10th Unleashed book, it would be a fairy tale. So I want to do something different. But I think we have a good idea. So we'll have to see
Mm-hmm.
how that pans out. But we'll probably because I have a lot of other projects now
Mm-hmm.
in the meantime. But maybe next year, then the third Unleashed book will come out.
Oh, okay. All right. Now, actually, I'm gonna throw in. I'm gonna start wrapping this up. Instead of two more questions, I got three more questions, and one is an off-the-cuff, fun question. Let's say you're doing a prose novel, Kickstarter, another Unleash anthology, or something, and then all of a sudden you get an email from Stephen King going, "Hey, I have a short story I want to drop in." What
Yeah.
would your reaction be?
Oh, no, I mean that I'm trying to get a Stephen. We even tried to get a Stephen King story for Classic Monsters Unleashed. And, I had asked, well, you can go. There's actually like a system you have to go through that you can request
Yes.
a story because he doesn't own his short stories.
Mm.
All of his short stories have been like sold off,
Yes.
and it's like Penguin owns them all. So
Hmm.
if you can go to Penguin and then you can request a story. So I requested to reprint the Boogeyman
Oh, yes.
in Classic Monsters Unleashed, and then
Hmm.
I never heard back from them. But then I saw that they're coming out with a Boogeyman movie.
Oh, yes. So
They
yeah.
probably they probably weren't going to give it to me, but
Hmm.
that was weird timing. So I thought that would have fit. But when I was growing up, every horror anthology had a Stephen King story in it.
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't see that as much now, but every horror anthology you ever saw back probably in the 80s, maybe
Hmm.
even the 90s had a Stephen at least one Stephen King, and that was like their big headliner. And then you might not have heard of the rest of the people, but there was always
Hmm.
that one Stephen King story to sell it. So I mean, I know other editors who put together anthologies and got Stephen King stories, so it's possible.
Hmm.
But I would love that. That would be great to have a Stephen King. An original would be really hard to get. You can get a reprint.
Hmm.
I don't even know
Mm.
what he would charge. But
Yeah.
I was even prepared to like for the Boogeyman to pay, which I probably shouldn't have.
No, yeah. Hmm.
But if they came back to me and said it would be $5,000, I might have done it.
Yeah. You have, yeah, it's just, yeah.
Just to have Stephen King.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I've worked with so many amazing people. I couldn't believe, but like Joe Lansdale's my favorite writer. So just to be able to have him in already two of my books has been crazy, you
Hmm.
know. So working with all of these people has just been insane. Like Steve
Hmm.
Niles, like 30 Days a Night, one of my favorite movies.
Hmm.
Uh, so just like even like getting emails from them and you see them pop up in your email, it's wild.
That is so cool. All right, you mentioned conventions. You're starting to go to conventions. Do you have any conventions lined up for this summer? Now, I'm going to let you know we probably release this interview sometime in May. So, do you have anything in like late May and June?
Yeah, I'm gonna be at CradleCon in Long Island, New York. I think May 20th and 21st.
Okay. Hmm.
think J.K. Woodward's going to be there too with me, so we're going to be signing Kolchak books there. I'll be at StokerCon in June.
Mm-hmm.
It's the middle of June in Pittsburgh, and I think I'm going to a convention in Denver in
Okay.
the middle of September. I think it's called well, Festival of Horror.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what I got lined up. So yeah, I mean it's been cool. I just went to a con called AuthorCon that Brian Keene runs.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just authors and it's just books and people buying tons of books.
Mm-hmm.
So I finally got to meet some of the people that I've worked with. I got to meet Tim Wagner,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
who's in. I think Tim Wagner's been in all of my projects so far.
It's nice.
So that was fun. I got
Mm-hmm.
to talk to Brian Keene.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like our first really big convention, especially with the Kolchak stuff. So we ended up selling a lot of Kolchak stuff.
That is great. Any closing words to our listeners?
Well, it's always fun to be on the show with you, Jason. And you've always been a big supporter, so I really appreciate that.
Oh,
But it's always fun.
James, thank you very much. James, I wish you the continued success with Kolchak, the Night Stalker 50th anniversary original graphic novel, and also too with Shakespeare Unleashed. Just James, thank you very much. Thank you again.
Absolutely.
Thank you for letting me giving me another opportunity to interview you, talk about Kolchak, and thank you very much for sending me a review copy of Shakespeare Unleashed because I've read some of the stories in the comic book one shot. Those are great. Some of the short stories in the anthology novel. Oh my god! Now I gotta go back and look for that oh that story. What was it? The Macbeth or King Lear, the one where the
Yeah,
businessman King Lear, the businessman, he's going to the fortune teller.
yeah, you got that story. It's a creepy story. It's really cool.
But now I want to read that. I want to check that out. So yes. Now, comic book lovers, if you love the original Kolchak TV series and if you love Shakespeare work, now please check out Kolchak the 50th Night Stalker 50th anniversary graphic novel and please check out Shakespeare Unleashed. The Kolchak graphic novel captures, and as we mentioned, as me and James talked about, it captures the spirit of the original 70s TV show. Um, Great stories, great art. You know, when I got it, when I got my digital copy, I had to start reading it. I couldn't wait for the hardcover to come. I just had to
Yeah,
start.
there was a long like
Yeah.
gap between the digital book and then because we didn't get the hardcovers. It took us months to get the hardcovers.
No, don't worry. But oh my god, man, um, I was just thankful for the digital. I went for the all in. I went for the hardcover, the digital
Right.
copy. Yeah, so and also too for Shakespeare Unleashed, it is a fun horror anthology that uses characters and themes from Shakespeare's plays. So it's really great. I love it. Me and James were talking about one of the stories that I read, um, "The Hungry Wife of Windsor" by Zachary Rosenberg. And James,
Mhm.
correct me if I'm wrong. I think they use some of the characters from one of Shakespeare's plays in that story. One character from Shakespeare play, I think.
Yeah, it matches up Falstaff, and then he
Yes.
thrown in with the Merry Wives of Windsor.
Mhm.
Uh, they're not what they seem, so
Yes.
there's some horror there.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I don't mean to keep you. Let me just mention this because I almost forgot. There was one comic story that I love in the one shot. It was Taming of the Shrew in the comic book.
Yeah,
Oh
yeah. Jeff
God.
Strand.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Jeff Strand wrote that one.
Oh God, that's in the one shot comic. That was funny. That was funny. So listeners, if you guys get a chance, check out Shakespeare Unlimited, the the um, the anthology or the one shot. Now, if now I also want to thank Drew, the host of Comics for Fun and Profit, for putting this episode together. Drew, thank you very much for all your hard work behind the scenes. And if you are a new listener, please check out new episodes of Comics for Fun and Profit that comes out every Saturday. And I want to thank you, the listener. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to this episode. Until next time, guys, aloha.
The good folks at Comics for Fun and Profit have been doing 2 episodes a week. for quite some time now, and it's all thanks to, first of all, Jason, and second of all, our patrons who allow us to add the space on our server, broadcast more, store more, share more with you, the listeners. I'm envious of those of you who have unlimited storage and media server capabilities. We pay for ours here at the C4FAP. It ain't cheap. We thank you so much for those of you who go to patreon.com/comicsfunprofit and contribute at any level to say thanks, to say, I want to be a part of your Slack channel conversations. I want to get exclusives. I want to get early access. I want to get ad-free access. I want to get swag. I want to get some free stuff. Whatever your reasoning is, we appreciate it at any level because it does make a difference. So from the bottom of Kyle and I and Jason's heart, thank you for contributing.